Mental health is a life sentence without parole. Too many of us carry invisible wounds, trauma, loss, shame, and silence. I created the Crawl, Walk, Run podcast to break that silence, to give a voice to the voiceless. This is not just a show. It is a platform, a place where authors, veterans, first responders, survivors, and everyday people can share their truth without fear of judgment. We crawl through the darkness. We walk toward healing, and we run into purpose. Together, we will build this community. This podcast is about resilience, about stories that matter, and about reminding the world that your voice could save someone's life. I'm your host, Steve-O, and this is Crawl, Walk, Run.
Robert identifies as a military sexual trauma, MST, victim and survivor. Before I even say his name, understand this. In the U.S. military, thousands of men experience sexual trauma every year, an estimated 500 plus in a single year alone, and many more never report it. And when you look at veterans, roughly 1 in 50 men report experiencing military sexual trauma. That means this isn't rare. It's just rarely talked about. His name is Robert. He's a U.S. Army veteran, 100% service-connected for PTSD tied to military sexual trauma. But what he carries didn't stay in uniform. It followed him, into his mind, his relationships, his identity. Since leaving the military, Robert has been in a different fight, one focused on recovery, understanding trauma, and rebuilding something real out of what was broken. Because trauma like this doesn't just live in the past. It shows up every single day, in how you think, how you trust, how you survive. And for men, this conversation is often buried, ignored, dismissed, silenced. That's why his story matters. Not for sympathy, but for awareness. Not just for himself, but for every man who's been through it and never said a word. Because the truth is, the strongest soldiers aren't the ones who never broke. They're the ones who are still here, carrying it and refusing to disappear.
I am Storytime with Steve-O, and this is the Crawl, Walk, Run podcast, Season 3, Episode 16. And this is Part 2 of Military Sexual Trauma, The Enemy Within. And today I have Robert, who has come on here and who has decided to tell his story and to come out of silence for the last 5 years. To all the senior leadership across our military, especially the United States Army, we say we take care of our soldiers. That's the standard we stand on. But when it comes to the military sexual trauma affecting men, it is overlooked. And the hard truth is, too many who speak up about it find themselves punished, sidelined, or removed from service. That breaks the brotherhood and the tribe. That breaks the tribe. And today, we have leaders within our ranks who have committed those crimes, which means the enemy is always out there, outside the wire. Sometimes the enemy is within. So I would like to bring in now Robert. Hey, Robert, what's up, man?
Hello, Steve-O. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, man. I just want to say thank you for coming on, man, and, sharing your voice. We're going to get right into it, man. What does crawl, walk, run mean to you, man?
So in my circumstances, I think crawling would literally mean crawling outside and having panic attacks, asking people for help and having the EMS show up. and being in a position where I don't have much support at all, don't have many recourse as to what's happening to my mental health as it's getting worse. And then I would say the walking aspect would be going to therapy, seeking help from people around me, whether that's people that are supportive, doctors, or peer counselors. And I would say running is at the stage where I'm at with the mentality, because while I still do struggle with many of the aspects of the PTSD, I've really took it upon myself to try to be as resilient as possible, and to share that today. And it's not easy at all, but I think I'm in a position that I can do it and I should do it. And if it could help others, then I would love to be able to do that.
What is trauma to you, and the trauma that you have? If you don't have trauma, what do you do to help other people with trauma?
So for me specifically, my trauma involves a lot of betrayal and being violated and humiliated. So I wish I could tell you that I had all the answers of how to solve it, because that's something that I'm still coping with on a daily basis. But I would say just be as supportive as possible and don't try to shove it back in their face and make it seem like it's their fault for what they're going through. That would be the best way that you could help somebody with trauma.
What are the coping mechanisms that you use for your trauma?
So specifically, what I deal with is a lot of nerve issues to where I feel like there's a burning sensation across my body, and it leads to me having the feelings of having panic constantly. So one of the things that really helps me calm down is a hot shower, and I know that's not like a medication or anything, but it genuinely helps to level me out. And I do a lot of walks, and I do gardening, things like that to kind of keep myself busy. I just think that trying to be as productive and positive as possible are the best ways to crawl out of those types of situations, at least for me specifically.
When you were removed from the United States Army service, what was your military transition like, and what is it like today after 5 years?
Yeah, so it wasn't great. I was really basically sidelined by my chain of command after I reported my NCO, and they pick and chose which regulation to follow to better fit their needs of silencing me. So that way, that on paper it would look like nothing ever happened. But it wasn't until after I did a Freedom of Information Act request to get a copy of the report, then I was able to get it to be taken seriously by people like the VA, for example. So this has been a really tough uphill battle for me, and obtaining all of the documents and evidence to put it together, so that way it's in black and white and there could be no disputable fact that it took place.
So before we get into your story, I'm going to play a video. It's going to play between us. So I'm going to let you compose yourself. I'm going to play this video. What has it been like carrying this in silence for the past 5 years?
Yeah, so I really haven't been able to give my side of the story, and nobody's really asked me my side of the story, to be honest with you. Since the time I was in the army, the only people that asked me my side of the story was CID, which is Criminal Investigation Division of the Army. And even they did a bogus, phony investigation, even though there was still a charge that was consummated at the end of the day for that investigation. It was very just swept under the rug and wasn't taken seriously at all. Basically, I give my statement in a professional environment in a room where there's another investigator. And then after that, I didn't hear from them until I heard from the commander that was overlooking the investigation, and he gave me a phone call, and it was very brief. So from then until now, it hasn't been great because no one's really cared to listen to me or really take me seriously. I have a couple of supportive family members, but other than that, everyone just tells me to get over it and move on. So that's what it's been like.
Well, you're here to break the walls down, man. So the platform belongs to you, brother. So uh, I don't know if you want me to stay up here with you and
Yeah, I
make you.
don't mind. It's not an issue. We can do that.
Um, and then if I feel you're getting a little, choked up in the video. In the recording, we're going to play another video so that the audience can compose themselves and you can compose yourself. So,
Sure.
what you're about to hear is going to be pretty traumatizing. A couple of people have been through MST and parent advisory. You'll see the parent advisory pop up behind Robert when he's talking. So, Robert, the show is yours, brother. Thank you for being very honest and raw. And he's going to say a few things that I told him he's allowed to say. So, knock it out, man.
All right. Thank you, Steve, for having me again. I just want to say I appreciate this opportunity. And before I begin, I want to preface this by saying this is something that I haven't really shared to a lot of. I actually haven't shared the whole story other than to my healthcare providers and people that like work for the government that need to know about it. So a couple of family members are tracking what's going on, but I really want to share this today so that way other people that are in my situation may know what to look forward to experience when they do make a report and what that might look like. And this is how it was in my circumstances. So I'll just start off like this. So when I got to my unit in 2020, right, this was during COVID. So most of the army was during at lockdown unless they were unless they were essential employees. So basically what that meant was nobody was really going to work at the time. But in my unit, since I worked on watercraft, we weren't in the public, so we were able to continue working. And we did a stateside deployment at this time. And while we were doing that, this basically was me going from basic and AIT to my unit and then going straight off on a voyage right after that. So I didn't have much time in the garrison environment. I was working with the crew that I was working with, which was I had a sergeant above me, a couple battle buddies in my direct area that I worked in. And then besides that, we had maybe 25 to 30 other people on the vessel with us. So we would go from city to city, from port to port until we had to do our business of what we had to do in the United States on the stateside level. And ultimately, I had a great experience with everybody. I really loved the job. I felt like it was a great opportunity and a blessing to be able to do what I was doing. And I even looked up to my sergeant because this was somebody that I felt like was a really like a good role model to me at the time. I felt like he was kind of a second father figure. And ultimately, everything was going great. We were in the States for the entirety of the time. And by the time holiday block leave came that year, 2020, for Christmas leave, we all took Christmas leave. And when I went home, my mom, she ended up on life support, and I had to pull the plug on her in the hospital. So my chain of command was very thoughtful, and they were able to extend my block leave actually for 2 weeks due to this situation to collect myself. So concluding that, I went back to work and I had my, mind focused on let me get my job done. I don't really want to do anything crazy and like because prior to this, everyone in the military is familiar with the shenanigans that goes on. Everybody loves to drink. Everybody likes to act crazy every once in a while when they get off of work. And that was the nature of the unit that I was in. So it wasn't like I was a stranger to it. It wasn't like it wasn't something that I was used to. But where it became an issue for me is where I'm about to get into now. So about 3 months later, after I got back to the unit, there was a lot of shenanigans still taking place. And let me remind you that we were on the state side for this deployment. So at this time, we were actually in Miami, like the actual Miami Beach Coast Guard station, and we were stopped there at the port to get supplies. And we couldn't leave for a while. So while I was there, if you could imagine during spring break in Miami, everybody, wants to have a good time. Everybody wants to drink. And we had liberty to do that at the time because Florida's restrictions were a lot more eased than the rest of the states at the time as well. So, after work, after hours, and on the weekends, everybody would go and do their thing in the city and meet people and hang out and have a good time. And we'd go back to work and we'd do what we had to do at work. Well, you know, I had kind of taken back myself from going out as much and drinking because number one, I've never really been a big drinker to begin with. I mostly just did it just to fit in socially with these guys. But ultimately, this is where the incident begins, is where I was sleeping. It was 03 in the morning, right? And my sergeant comes in with two of my battle buddies and they're obliterated, they're wasted. and they come in, and my sergeant's trying to provoke me while I'm sleeping, trying to like get like a reaction out of me basically. So he's like, like not hard, but he's like slapping me on the face, he's trying to like shake me, and then I'm like telling him to back off, I'm trying to sleep basically at this time. So what ends up happening after that is, he continues to do it, and this is the aspect of it where it felt like, he was kind of breaking my personal space and just violating me. So he started, you know there's a thing that people do that is could be okay, I guess, in certain situations, like when you're horse playing around, but when you're sleeping in the middle of the night, it's very and there's two people sitting there laughing and drinking and staring at you, it's not an appropriate situation. It's not an appropriate situation at all to begin with, but I let a lot of things slide in the past. So basically, he starts trying to he's doing this thing where he's like groping me, but he's not trying to have intercourse with me. I knew that's not what he was trying to do, and he was just doing it to get a reaction out of me and get under my skin. So when he did that, I pushed him off of me, and he stumbled backwards because he was drunk and he weighs 250 pounds, and he fell on the ground where he was. And then everyone was like, the two of my battle buddies that were sitting there, they were like, "Oh," and he got up and then he yanked me out of. And you got to keep in mind, this is a room on a military vessel, so it's not very big, and I was on the top rack. So he grabs me and then throws me on the ground and then pins me on the ground while I'm on my stomach. And then he starts wailing me in the face, calling me a faggot. And I can only assume that's because they found out my sexuality on a dating app, that I was bisexual, that I didn't really, make public. But since they found out, how could I hide it, right? So, it felt like it was very personal at that moment. It felt like it was just like maybe this was some sort of built up aggression that he's held in for a while, and he let it out at this moment, and he decided to, embarrass me and humiliate me in this moment, right? So I was able to break free, and I got the help of the officers on duty at the time, and they were able to quell the situation. And right after the situation, they asked me, do I want to make a report? Well, I wasn't in the mindset of making a report really at all to begin with, but they wanted to, ask me because like it was a serious situation, and I told them not at this time, right? So I went back to bed that evening, and everyone went to bed. But I woke up the next day, and I found out that he was restricted to the vessel, so he wasn't able to, go out in the city and have fun anymore. Basically, what is what that means. And the first thing he said to me was, "You snitched on me." Well, I really didn't, snitch on him. It's just like, you got to keep your hands to yourself. And I don't understand why you think you have the right to do that, especially while I'm sleeping. I wasn't drinking with you. I wasn't out partying with you. Rule is you're supposed to come back to the vessel, either go to the washroom and wash your face or use the restroom and then go to bed, not provoke other people on the boat. Right. So ultimately, um, I continued work for the next month. And that led me to having a mini breakdown, and my chain of command decided it was best for me to go back to the garrison environment at the time. And when I got back there, I was there for about a solid month, and the rest of my crew was still in Florida. So I went back to Hawaii early, where I was stationed, and I was in my garrison environment, and I started seeking mental health services. And that's when I was able to get into counseling while I was still active duty. So while I was there, and this is where it really gets to the point to where it's like it's like salt on a wound, right? So already that situation takes place. And while I'm back in the unit, I have to deal with ongoing harassment and threats, from my battle buddies that were involved with the situation. My sergeant still was trying to be like supportive halfway, but he really wasn't taking much seriously with me. So, and I'll explain what that means. So, for example, he was still my sergeant at this time. I was still around the same people in the same unit, and they were still continuing their shenanigans with the drinking. They were still acting crazy, in the barracks. And, I was sleeping one night, and, they were drunk. I guess they thought they forgot something in my room, which I know they didn't. But they were saying that they were going to break down the door and beat my ass, and I was literally just fresh out of the shower. So I was like in the middle of getting changed and I was like in the nude, right? So they, you know, I never actually reported this, but I opened the door and I had another breakdown at that point where I started throwing my TV and belongings around. And that's when they were like laughing at me, mocking me for the situation. They thought it was entertainment, right? And that was a Friday evening when that took place. So when Monday morning came around, I failed to report because I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know if I didn't feel safe talking to my sergeant, because you have to understand that I was kind of like out, alienated from these guys after this situation, right? So I didn't have like them to go to, and I didn't really feel like I knew who to go to at the time. So when I failed to report that Monday, the first sergeant called me and I told him I need to go to mental health. I don't think that I'm able to come to work today due to the, I couldn't really explain to him why at the time. And I showed up to work and he berated me. And that's when I went into his office with two other NCOs present, my sergeant and another sergeant that was there. So I couldn't really fully explain to him what happened, what I was dealing with at the time. And I was kind of put on the spot in front of my first sergeant and the sergeant who violated me and another sergeant. And so I just kind of, made it seem like, well, I'm just dealing with personal issues because my mom and this and that. And, prior to that, when I was still in Miami, I actually let my detachment sergeant know that I was dealing with a substance abuse issue that I was coping with. And his advice for me was to quit smoking. Well, obviously that's the advice that you're going to give me, but I think, I was looking for more help than that. Anyways, I told my first sergeant that as well, that I was consuming, substances. And about a week later, um, they did a urinalysis, and that's when they began my separation action. So during this time, I was under scrutiny, I was under a microscope. It wasn't going well for me, and I had a love interest reach out to me, which is something that never happens, and I should have took it as a red flag. But this is what ended up happening ultimately is she reached out to me on multiple platforms, and I decided to go and hang out with her, and we seemed to hit it off really well, actually. And the thing is that I didn't feel safe in the barracks, number one, because I was dealing with these guys. And number two, I didn't have a lot of support at the time. So I maybe rushed into this relationship a little quicker than I should have. And ultimately, I found out, if you get married, you can live with the person you're married to, obviously, in the military. So a lot of aspects of our relationship were very rushed. We ended up getting married a few months later. But to give it some credit, is that we seemed to match really well at the time. We seemed to share a lot of the same interests. We seemed to have each other's back in the beginning. So I didn't know any better, honestly, but I rushed into this situation thinking that it would be good for me, which ended up not being good for me. So, and the reason I want to add this to the what I'm telling you today is because it connects, and I'll explain later towards the end of how that will make sense. But she was someone that was supportive for me in the beginning, right? And initially, I felt like I had a safe place to go living with her, and ultimately, the shenanigans kept going, but I was not near them, and I could just go to work and go home. So I didn't have to be around these guys as much, and I didn't have to be like in their purview and situation, dealing with them drinking and constantly acting belligerent, right? Because I would offer to be their designated driver. And for example, I would pick up my sergeant from the bar, and he would throw my car that he sold me into neutral while I'm driving on the highway, or scream out, yell the N word at people while we're driving down the highway. And it put me just in a very like weird position because I felt like I was babysitting him, really. I mean, it's just like here I am, I'm the specialist, right? And he's my E5 sergeant, and I'm the one that has to be the adult. I'm the one that has to have maturity. So I'm basically taking the role of the adult and, trying to be cordial and conduct myself professionally, even when, I wasn't in uniform. And it just really bit me in the ass because, I think it alienated me further. It made me kind of like an easy punching bag for these guys for jokes. But, ultimately, I apologize, I lost my train of thought. They did not like the fact that I quote unquote snitched on him, right? Because I think that's just what he told, a lot of people, that I snitched on him or whatever, even though I didn't really. And it led to them having, I think they were trying to prank call me one evening, and I was sitting with my wife, and I don't think they realized that they didn't hang up the phone, and the phone was in his pocket. But I overheard the conversation, and I heard my sergeant's voice and a couple of the other guys saying, "So we don't like Bobby now," because that's the nickname they gave to me was Bobby. And I don't know really too much of what else they said, but it seemed like it was very anti me, whatever they were talking about. So at that time, I just did not feel comfortable. I did not feel like, these guys had my best interest. I feel like they just really were out to get me, pretty much. They were bullying and harassing me and threatening me, so I didn't feel safe. I was constantly looking out the blinds and stuff like that, even at the time back then. And when this happened, I didn't know what to do, so I called my chain of command, and the person that I spoke with, I don't want to give it away. Um, I was really just trying to seek help to see what we could do so I could change units. I was trying to double down on asking about that. And he told me because of what I told him, now I have to file a report. So there was really no getting out of it. I had to do it because I told him what I told him, So the next morning I went to the CID office, and that's when I gave the formal statement of what happened, you know. And from that moment on, I was removed from that specific unit, but I was still in the company. So I still saw these people frequently. I still saw my sergeant frequently. I was within the influence of the chain of command of my sergeant. He knew all the other sergeants and the first sergeant. And it really seemed like I shook the hornet's nest when I made the report, because my first sergeant, it seemed like he took it personal. It really did. And he basically tried to, initiate bogus investigations against me. He tried to make me out to be a problem soldier. People would tell me, "Oh, maybe you're just not cut out for the army. Maybe this, maybe that, right?" And all the meanwhile, I'm trying to do the best that I can, but also at the same time, I'm coping with this substance abuse issue, right? Which I self-admitted for under Army Regulation 600-85, which clearly states that if you self-admit to using these substances, you're supposed to get help. But how am I supposed to get help when I'm still in the influence of these people every day? You couldn't help it by just moving me out of the situation. I think that would have helped the most, but I'm not a rocket scientist. So um anyways, I didn't feel safe. It continued on. Instead of me being under the purview of my sergeant, I was under my first sergeant, and it seemed like he just delegated a lot of the retaliation for my sergeant at the time. So moving forward, I have to continue with the drug program that they put me into. I don't really have an idea of what's going on. I don't really have a place or a job or a role. I'm just doing kind of whatever they told me to. And, I did everything the best that I was able to do with what I had, right? They told me to teach a class. I taught the class exactly how they wanted me to teach it. I did everything by the book. I did everything. I came to the right place at the right time, right uniform. I did everything that I was supposed to do, right? And ultimately, at the same time this is happening, my now ex-wife, she's having a miscarriage, unfortunately. So she's dealing with her own mental issues from that, and understandably, and I'm trying to be supportive of her, but actually it created more of a wedge between us in our relationship. And um after that, she just completely, like, sidelined me as well. It was like, I was just kind of second to her, or not second to her, but second to whoever she was with. She would have relationships with other men, and it just put me last, right? So, like, over time, I brought this up to her as well, and I told her, if this is going to continue, I don't think I can continue this relationship with you. And it was like she took that personally, you know, and then I became her enemy after that. And the reason I bring this up is because she ended up living with my sergeant not too long after that and working for him. And it was like such a slap in the face because of what happened prior to that, you know. Like it was like, number one, right, my mom passes away. Then 3 months later, my boss violates me while I'm sleeping and then puts the blame on me for standing up for myself. And then number three, you know, my wife, she didn't have my back. She wasn't supportive, and she was the opposite of supportive, you know. She ran a smear campaign and totally ruined my reputation, you know, with the help of my sergeant, and even had family members, you know, that I don't even haven't talked to like really for years, like coming against me. So like I had all these people coming against me, you know. And when I got out of the military, you know, it was a lot of the same experiences, you know. Really, like when I came back, I wasn't the same person. So a lot of people distanced themselves from me. They would say I'm too aggressive, or I'm this, I'm that, I need to get over it. Or, you know, I have people throwing what happened to me in my face. What you like my half sister, she told me, what, you think you're better than us because you got uh she said raped in the military and got disability. And it's like, I never once said any of those things. Like, these are what is coming from you. I never said anything like that. Like, you're just not being supportive and you're throwing it in my face. Really, that's what you're doing. And everyone just came against me, you know. And ultimately, I couldn't get really any support from anywhere. I've had to fight this battle myself, and I've had to go to the VA myself, fight that battle with them, get all of the documents, get all of the paperwork. And you know, the whole thing about it is that when you go through this situation, there's a lot of stigma behind it, especially for males, right? Because, you know, it's such a humiliating experience. Like, I don't think any man wants to say that another man got the best of him. You know, I feel like I was in between a rock and a hard place. Like, what else was I supposed to do? You know, like, should I have just taken it? Like, I don't understand. Like, should I not stand up for myself? It didn't make like any sense whatsoever to me. It just seemed like they were more mad at the fact that I snitched on him rather than what he did, you know, because the whole thing was is if there's any type of issue, we keep it at the lowest level possible, which is, you know, within the chain of command. And I guess they think I betrayed them by making this report, even though I was ordered to make it by my chain of command, right? So
Robert,
ultimately, yeah,
can we go to a commercial break real quick?
yeah, no problem.
I'm going to put you down in the green room and let you compose yourself. And we're going to go commercial break real quick. All right, brother?
Okay.
All right, man.
Fool me once or fool me twice. It's not.
All right, man. You can continue. Real quick, what made you decide it was time to speak out and become an advocate for men dealing with MST?
Yeah, that's been weighing on my mind a lot lately, to be honest with you. Well, I have to say that a lot of people keep telling me to get over it and move on. And I feel like the way for me to heal from this is to correct their record and, and also advocate for myself. So, you know, I don't know which way would be the best way to do it. Like I said, I'm in therapy. I'm doing everything that I can in my personal life to try to overcome this. But I feel like I'm in a position to where I could share this, and I hope that it'll help other people, you know, dealing with the kind of retaliation that I dealt with, and as well as the mental health challenges. So I just think that it was appropriate, since it's been 5 years at this point, to really push myself to this point. And I think this is really a big hurdle that I have to overcome. So I'd like to just really leave it in the past, honestly. But I think this is a good way to channel a lot of the frustration, honestly.
So, is there anything that you would say to anyone that's a victim of MST um, that you've learned, like lessons learned to help
Sure.
people come
Yeah.
out?
So you might be like in an impossible situation like I was. If you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't type of situation. So my advice would be to collect evidence, right? Collect paperwork, documents, anything that you can. Any type of evidence that you're going through, go through the proper channels. Um, don't try to be a soldier that makes it worse for yourself, right? You still are a soldier at the end of the day, and you still got to follow the rules and regulations. You don't get an excuse for anything. But I would say that in my situation, what helped me was gathering the documents, staying cordial, and biting my tongue a lot through it, the process. So, I took the punches where they were where they landed. And ultimately, I'm glad that I did make this report, even though I never really wanted to begin with. This was somebody that, like I said, I thought maybe we could reconcile after this. I thought maybe there was a way for him to apologize back then. This was someone who I admired, I respected. I bought my first car from him. I helped him start his business. And for him to return the favor back to me in the way that he did, it was just unacceptable, especially considering that he's my boss. It's just very unprofessional. And the way that my chain of command handled it was just very unprofessional. So I would say that for anybody else going through this situation, collect evidence, remain resilient. You're a soldier. I know it's tough, but you have to, for the sake of your well-being, and making sure that you get out of the situation, like I did, because as we all know, other people have worse repercussions for reporting. But like I said, I took a lot of the punches. So
Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so I'm gonna play the last video so that you can compose yourself. I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then we're gonna head out, man.
All right, sounds good.
All right, I'm gonna get up here. I ran into some technical issues, but I think I corrected it. So, all right, man. Here we go. So, let me just say one thing. Um, when you transitioned out, um, has the word suicide come upon your mind a few times?
I feel like I'd rather not say um online for
Well,
social. I feel.
here I'll lead in. In 2014, I was going to unalive myself and paint the room red because I was in a non-intimate marriage for 10 years, and I wanted to show my daughter and my wife at the time that I mattered, because I was the bread maker, I was the deadbeat dad, and I was very suicidal. And I will tell you, there are a lot of veterans that come back that go through sexual trauma, combat, highly decorated, Bronze Star, Silver Star, freaking Purple Heart across their chest. And what do? They unalive themselves. So, but that's all right if you don't want to disclose that. But I just truly think that I think a lot of people think of that. They
I will
don't
say
do it,
this. I will
you know.
say this though. I was Baker acted 2 years ago. Well, actually, about 3 years ago now. For making a statement like that, and I had my weapons taken for like a year. Right, they took my weapons away, and I went to a facility at the time. So. Imagine like going from being a soldier that, is on top of his game. His unit commander thinks highly of him. He's doing everything he has to do. He's on his way to be an NCO. And then to the point to where I'm in a mental hospital because everyone wanted to push me down and make me out to be the problem, in the circumstances that I was in. So, it was a very low moment for me, and I didn't have any support except for a couple family members at the time. So yeah, I mean, like it's definitely something that is not easy to struggle with or cope with, and I have a lot of empathy for veterans dealing with that as well.
What's your goal? What's your purpose now in life?
Well, it's really just to rebuild my life, just to get back to being normal again. It's been very challenging dealing with the isolation, the paranoia, the adrenaline constantly. I mean, it's life changing. It really is. Like, I have no other way to put it. Like, I mean, before this, I was very outgoing. I was kind of a people pleaser, really. And now I'm so reclusive. I don't if a spam caller calls my phone, I get an adrenaline flash. Like I'm very isolated. I keep to myself. I don't like to go out in public very often. It's like just trying to relearn how to live, again, but now you have to deal with the issues associated with the mental health disorder, right? So, I've tried to go to different places, states, and I even took a trip last year out of the country. And even while I was there, I couldn't enjoy most of the trip because, like I ended up having a lot of issues where I ended up staying in the hotel most of the time, really. But yeah, I mean, it's really just trying to overcome the mental health aspect of everything and pushing myself and being resilient.
Two last things. Do you receive any bullying comments?
So I did when I went on that trip last year. I I found out when I started posting on social media. My ex-wife came across my page, and she seemed like she wanted to catch up with me, so we caught up over a phone call over FaceTime. And that's when I learned that she was living with my sergeant, right? And it felt like a slap in the face to me. So I made a video addressing that, and that's when they all came out of the woodworks and started, coming up with all this slander under my profile and saying I was this, I was that, I did this, I did that. Weren't you this? Weren't you that? So at the time, I actually made, an FBI report, and the FBI agent sort of laughed me off for even suggesting that there was any type of harassment going on. So, it wasn't, I didn't feel like it was very helpful to go to them either. Like the whole process, the government just seemed to make it seem like I was asking for too much, to get support or help through this entire situation. So, I didn't feel like anybody had my best interests. And when I see harassment online, for other people that deal with these types of situations, it makes me think twice about talking about it. But I feel like someone has to do it, and like I feel like the position I'm in allows me to be able to do that. So I'm going to have the strength to push forward.
I think it's going to make you a stronger person, man. And like I said, man, I've been bullied. I've been called some names. Um, I'm probably going to send you the audio book of No Filter if you do audiobooks. If not, then I'll
That would be great.
send you. You do audiobooks, man?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you No Filter, man. And then you'll know what the hell I went through. But it's about you, not me. But I'm just telling you, man. I said, and you know what, man? I'm going to drop it. I told them to fuck themselves, man. I don't care, man. I got divorced. I cut the strings. No one controls me. No one's in charge of me. I have no boss. I'm retired. I'm an advocate. I don't care what people think of me. You got your haters. You got your lovers. You got your people on the right. You got your people on the left. And I'm just a patriot, man. And
Well,
I'm
the
there.
way I see it is that like
I'm,
how much more isolated could I be? You know what I'm saying? Like I don't have any friends, I don't talk to anybody, I don't go out. What do I have to lose to do this? It's either sit around all day and think about it and let it drive me crazy, or talk about it, So it's just like even if they judge me, they were going to judge me anyways. So, I, you
but
know,
you're on social media platforms and you're talking about it. I'm watching you. That's how I learned about you. That's how you and I connected. Grow that platform, man, and be the advocate. Come on lives and uh, post the just the title MST talk about or SA. You don't want to say the word because you can get like
Right.
restricted. You know, the TikTok is. But hey, man, in closing, um, what do you want men who are trying to heal from MST to take from your message that you said today?
I would say to just maintain your resilience. Maintain your resilience and keep pushing forward. What led me through this entire process felt like it was some sort of spiritual guide, for me personally. I wasn't really that religious before this happened, and now I wear a cross every day, and that's just for me personally, but others might have other religions or, ways of thinking about those types of things. But I swear that it it was such a divine situation to where like I was at the right place at the right time for each thing that I had to be, and I did what I was supposed to do for each situation, and it led me out in a way that I was able to get out with getting any more harm done. So thankfully, um, in my circumstances, that was the case, but other circumstances may be different. And I would say for those, just make sure you document everything. Make sure you keep all of the paperwork, any counseling statements, any Article 15s, any documents whatsoever, or photographs, videos. All of those are going to help you down the line. You want to hold on to all of that stuff.
Robert, I just want to say you're very brave. You're a warrior, dude. Like, fuck them, man. You know what? Do what you got to do, man. Stand strong. Keep your head high. Don't worry about what people are saying around you, man. Block them out. Lock it in, man. Be the advocate. I'm telling you, man. I want to thank you very much for coming on. This is not the end of our relationship. I think we're going to build a relationship. And maybe next year I'll bring you on again, man. And we'll do part 2 of part 1 with you and see how life is going, man. So, and maybe when I start traveling in October to go do public speaking, man, maybe I'll stop by and say hi, man. Put my
Yeah,
arm
that would be
around you,
fantastic.
man.
I actually have a whole lot more that I wanted to say, but I think for to get the message across today, I think what I was able to give is going to work. There's just a lot more details to the whole situation. Like the whole reason I brought up my ex-wife, I just want to say in closing, is that I have had a lot of suspicions that she was a honeypot. And that wasn't even something that I really knew about that existed in the first place. And then after I explained the situation to ChatGPT. ChatGPT, the AI, is what gave me, the indication that may be a potential thing what was happening. So, she was best friends with my sergeant's wife, prior to me meeting her, things like that. So I just always wonder how much of the, marriage was even real, to be honest. How much of the support that I got from anybody was even real. It just felt like a complete betrayal. And I'll say, if you're in a tough situation, going through MST, don't rush into any relationships, especially during a time like that. That was my mistake, so just want to leave it with that.
We all have broken mirrors, man. We all have broken mirrors, and we need to pick up the pieces and slowly put them back in the mirror. And just like the image you see behind us, put it all back together and never run into a brick wall, man. So I'm going to drop you down. Um, if we want to do a second part of this interview, you could come on and talk more about it. That just gives you more time, but we have a certain time limit because I feel that people that have trauma or that have mental health issues or just going through this shit, man, they can't sit through it like.
I think your video cut out. Are you there?
Boy, we're just having fun today, aren't we?
Yeah, I know it's the connection. Maybe it's because I'm at the park.
Well, I
But
can't hear you, man.
can you hear me now?
I Shit
All
happens,
right.
right?
Yeah, no worries. I know the connection was a little
Can you
bit
hear me?
unstable. I could hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Well, I can't hear you, but I'm going to close the show, man. All right, brother?
No. All
You have
right.
a great
Thank
one,
you.
man.
You as well. Thank you.
All right. I am Storytime with Steve-O. Boy, I don't know, man. The internet is sucking today, and I just got this new T-Mobile box, and I'll tell you what, man. I'm about to take this T-Mobile box back and slam it in the. Anyways. All right. So, we want to thank Robert for coming on, man. Lose my composure. Breathe. Steve-O. This is season 3, episode 16 of the Crawl, Walk, Run podcast. And I am Steve-O. And if you want to come on the podcast, reach out to me. This closes the chapter of military sexual trauma. And if you were offended by anything, I'm sorry, but Robert's real and down to it. So this is my closing message. There are men out there right now still carrying it, still silent, still fighting alone. This conversation is for them, not just to hear the truth, but to understand that they are not alone. Because healing doesn't start in silence. It starts when someone finally speaks, like Robert. He's a brave soul, and he's a true warrior. And I am Storytime with Steve-O. And I would just like to say, have a good one. I'm out.
Crawl, Walk, Run has been brought to you by Storytime with Steve-O. And speaking for the once in silence, we are the voice of the unheard. If you have a story, please reach out. Till next time.